Welcome to Finding Avalon, the podcast that amplifies disabled voices. I'm your host, Jenna, a disability inclusion advocate, communicator, and storyteller. This is a place where disabled folks correct the narrative by sharing authentic lived experiences. Join me as we explore life with disability through our lens, because representation matters. This season, you'll hear candid, insightful stories from award-winning advocates, tenacious entrepreneurs, stigma-breaking creatives, a disabled pet turned internet sensation, a Paralympic triple medalist, and more. Whether you're a person living with disability or an ally who wants to better support us, Finding Avalon invites you to listen, reflect, and learn so that together we can take action to build truly inclusive communities. Hey folks, it's the Finding Avalon podcast Season 1 finale. Thanks for joining me for a recap of highlights of this empowering showcase of disability inclusion advocacy. As you know, Finding Avalon unapologetically centers and elevates authentic disabled voices, leadership, and learning, one story at a time. I'm your host, Jenna Barnable, a disability inclusion advocate, advisor, educator, and creator from the East Coast of Canada. Let's get into it. Disabled, chronically ill, and neurodivergent life is diverse. It's intersectional, and it's something we need to see more of so that our stories are told by us and not about us. The first season of the Finding Avalon podcast illustrated something I already knew, but maybe not everyone did, that disabled folks are some of the most resilient and innovative, deep-thinking, and hilarious people. My guests wowed me time after time with their tenacity, generosity, expertise, irreverent humor, and undeniable main character energy. I was so grateful to showcase their stories by creating this collection as a community learning resource. In Season 1, my guests and I covered topics ranging from disability discrimination in both society and its systems, and inaccessibility in many forms. Some people shared bravely about healthcare nightmares, bullying, childhood and relationship abuse, generational trauma, fat phobia, medical gaslighting, addictions recovery, and late diagnosis, as well as misdiagnosis. From becoming blind while on vacation to crashing into autistic burnout, my guests shared openly and changed perceptions, assumptions, and misconceptions about disability, chronic illness, and neurodivergence. Together, we explored accessibility in the arts, cyber safety in a hostile digital world, the wonder and excitement of parasports, and the long road to recovery for disabled survivors of domestic violence. And along the way, we balanced these very sensitive topics with humanity and humor, adorable pets, embarrassing personal anecdotes, and random asides and rants. My guests shared stories of personal grit through loss and struggle in a world that doesn't support disabled people, really showed their keen insights and their transformative resilience, and how these folks use their voices and their experiences to educate, create, and make change. Throughout the series of 16 guest interviews, there was laughter and dark humor, passionate and pointed language, and even some heavy sighs and silent, teary moments. With Finding Avalon, I was determined to stop the all-too-common tropes of disabled stories being polarizing tragedies or uplifting inspirations. We are not simply tragedies or inspirations, folks. We are complex human beings navigating adversity, not just from our own conditions, but most of all through the barriers and exclusion that society has created for centuries. As the stories in this collection will show you, we are complete human beings with vibrant inner and outer lives, not just an inspirational quote or a cautionary tale. We're resilient and fierce, absolutely, but we're also human, hurting, fragile, and flawed. We have deep empathy, deeper thoughts, and some biting wit. We're saints and sinners and everything in between. Our willingness to fight disability discrimination, standing up for ourselves and for others, takes many forms, whether through advocacy, activism, art, or education. In Finding Avalon Season 1, I featured business people, artists, therapists, healthcare professionals, parents, advocates, athletes, and academics, and much more. Whether chronically ill, disabled, or neurodivergent, or an ally working alongside us in the community, each featured story in the Finding Avalon collection carries a meaningful message for listeners, no matter who you are. Through this storytelling series, one theme rang clear. Sharing our stories lets us know that we are not alone and that we're better together in community. Disabled stories must be told by disabled voices from disabled perspectives. What I really loved about this first season was how my guests brought their intersectional lens to the podcast, sharing their diverse backgrounds and their experiences. And as you probably know by now, Finding Avalon prioritizes and centers women's, gender diverse peoples, BIPOC, 2S LGBTQ, and other underrepresented, marginalized perspectives that deserve to be heard. The vibrant picture that season 1 of Finding Avalon paints is the kind of representation and authenticity that modern media needs right now. Disabled is human, and disabled is diverse. Folks, I'm still completely in awe of the caliber of featured guests who were eager to participate. This made Finding Avalon's first season a banger of a collection to remember and revisit. Let's start with the Canadians. Naomi Kafka, Kristen Harrington, Ashley King, Charlotte Paul, Catherine Dunmore, Candace Caldwell, Angel Reyes Giacalone, Layla Messner, Jonathan Weisklus, Christina Kaiser, and Paul Tingley. Thank you all so much. And we didn't stop there. The Finding Avalon podcast also attracted guests from all around the globe. Geneva in the United States, Fernand Vedren in Mexico, Chloe Hammond in England, Gemma Gray in Scotland, Roxy Velez in Spain, and 2 celebrity pets raising disability awareness, award-winning assistance dog Acho from the UK and diabetic pet ambassador Adonis Sugar Kitty from Germany. Thank you all for being part of this movement. I've learned so much from you all, and I feel like I've made real bonds and new friends too. And I also want to take a moment to recognize the impact of the musicians who helped enhance the Finding Avalon podcast in its very first season. Coal Miner, the pensive, emotive theme song, has a perfect blend of depth and comfort. It was absolutely perfect. So a great big thank you to the musicians, Naomi Kafka, Steve Hoskins, Bryn Porter, and Tony Kostelik. Please check these artists out, support them however you can, buy their music, go out to their shows, and celebrate Canadian artists. Now, a podcast would not exist without an audience. So thank you so much for listening in and for following, liking, sharing, and leaving comments, sending me direct feedback, and sending it along to your friends and your colleagues. I love to see it. So, who exactly are Finding Avalon's fans and listeners? I am a geek for data and analytics, and the early data tells me that this show's listeners are 78% female, ranging from their 20s and 30s right up to women in their 40s and 50s. It's a huge group, and it's the largest group of listeners. 11% non binary, mostly people in their 30s to their 50s, and 11% male, mostly 30s to 50s as well. The biggest surprise when I looked at these stats was the sheer age range of listeners, from teenagers age 16 to people over 60. And this makes sense too, because we know disability impacts all ages. So I'm really pleased to see such wide engagement with this podcast from people of so many age groups. Now, where are my listeners from? The top 5 countries in descending order are Canada, France, Australia, the US, and the UK. And finally, something really promising when I looked at my stats were that listeners are very engaged in the podcast, coming back time and time again. I was thrilled to see over 500 downloads and listens in just the first 6 months of a completely unknown, brand new, indie, very niche, disabled led feminist podcast. I think that is absolutely amazing and encouraging. And it makes my heart 3 times as big. So thank you so much for being engaged. It's exactly what I had hoped for. When I created the Finding Avalon podcast, I wanted to attract listeners who are curious and empathetic, people who are independent thinkers, open minded, and interested in lifelong learning. They're unafraid to ask questions. They're the kinds of people who consider different perspectives. And they're not afraid to change their minds or to share their experiences and voice their strong opinions. And most of all, I hope my listeners would be people who care about creating an inclusive community where there is no place for disability discrimination. I had envisioned disabled people, non disabled people, anybody who wanted to learn more about anti ableism, education, advocacy, and ways to be stronger allies. I'm so grateful that I was able to attract exactly that in listeners, in an audience. I hope you can keep sharing episodes with your circle and help Finding Avalon reach more people who can learn and unlearn and be entertained along the way, all for a good cause. I wanted to share with you some nice news and applause for my advocacy work through the Finding Avalon podcast. I was touched and grateful to be recognized 3 times in the show's inaugural year. I was named a finalist in the Halifax Business Awards, shortlisted as a finalist for the Canadian Women's Foundation Feminist Creator Prize, and the very first recipient of the NSCC Transformational Change Alumni Award. I've also been very fortunate to be featured by a number of podcasts and publications, which is a wonderful way to spread the word about disability inclusion advocacy, the work that I do, and the podcasts and other series I create. And hopefully, as a result of this publicity that I've been so grateful to receive this year, maybe more people will learn about my work and get curious about disability inclusion, anti-ableism education, consuming more disabled content, and hiring more disabled professionals. And maybe, if I'm lucky, some more podcast listeners for season 2. Yes, I'll be telling you more about that in a moment. This is all far beyond my expectations, considering that this past year has honestly been one of the most challenging and debilitating years for me when it comes to my disability and level of pain, including me having been badly injured in an accident early on in production. In many ways, this podcast was a guiding light and a bright spot to focus, connecting me to others and giving me a purpose and community in some of my most painful times. And that is thanks to the people who have supported me, to the collaborators who wanted to be part of this collection and this podcast, and to everybody who listened and supported and shared and helped out in so many different ways. So I really thank my guests and my listeners for being here and making it all well worth it. I'm so thankful that more people are committing to continue to learn and unlearn on their way to becoming confident self advocates and strong community allies, because our society needs both. Before I finish, I want to do something important. Dedicate the Finding Avalon podcast to someone incredibly special, someone who helped shape me, the original catalyst for my advocacy passion. I dedicate Finding Avalon to the memory of my grandmother, or as we say in Newfoundland, my Nan, Elizabeth Barnable, an incredible woman who lived with disability her entire adult life. Nan, or Mrs. Lizzie, as locals called her, struggled with chronic pain, immobility, and other health conditions. And, like me, she went undiagnosed and insufficiently treated and supported for many long years. This was because of that all too familiar gender bias in healthcare, barriers to access in remote places, a lack of valuing women's health and wellness, and the enduring ableist attitudes and comments that her very real and constant pain and symptoms were not real, that she was looking for attention, acting, or simply not trying hard enough. I can tell you it was extremely painful and angering to witness this as I grew up from a child to a teenager to an adult. And I stood up for her and supported her in the only ways I knew how to back then. I wish I had the knowledge and ability to do more then, but I am doing this now in memory of my Nan. All of my advocacy work is fueled by my deep love for her and my sense of justice for her and for other disabled people who have been let down by ableist systems and society. And despite everything, my Nan loved life, and she made life beautiful and memorable and humorous for so many of us, even through her hardest struggles. She was the color in my life. She was my safe haven. I miss her terribly every day. And now, decades later, I didn't know our stories as women would have such strong parallels. Each of us experiencing disability and the discrimination and barriers that come with it, lifetimes apart, but somehow I feel like we're both still very closely hand in hand. So here's to one of the strongest, kindest women I have ever known, Elizabeth Barnable. Your experience was real, Nan. It was valid and it was witnessed. Your story, your tenacity, and your struggle will not be for nothing, because I fight for both of us now, Nan. This is dedicated to you with all my love. Finding Avalon is a place where we can learn to do better when it comes to disability inclusion, accessibility, anti-ableism, and disabled rights. If you're listening and you would like to support this show, please reach out to me with an email to hello@jenniferbarnable.com and become a sponsor. Donations of any size are very welcome. And thanks to a strong response to this podcast, Finding Avalon will return for a second season. Stay tuned for news about a new format for 2026. Thank you so much for coming along this journey with me. Together, we really are finding Avalon, one story at a time.